Just decided to come on St. Louis just to talk just for a few minutes. I'm not going to stay long. As you can see, I'm out here at the lake, hanging out with the ducks, the birds, as they do a little communicating with one another, of course. I think what's important is for us to understand exactly what is possibly going on. I don't think we've come to the realization to understand what truth is. Is it possible that we are still in the position of being primitive in mind and haven't yet reached the level of understanding that we are primitive in mind? And I think the reason that this is possible is because of the fact that we're producing technology, but the technology is literally being created based upon the laws of thermodynamics. Entropy increases, semiconductors, transistors. Many of you understand Moore's law. It states that every 18 months, transistors will get smaller. And now you can literally put a billion transistors on a cell phone that can do what would have been impossible to do as it relates to being able to control a space shuttle and send it to the moon with just a small device. I want to believe that we, as a human species, as I can say, a living organism, had not reached the level of mind to understand that we never understood. And the question would be is, how can you understand something and you never reach the mind to know that there's something else to know? And what we've done was we became complacent. We became complacent with what we think is, and unfortunately what we think is has never allowed us to understand that it's incomplete. What am I saying? We're building autonomous cars based upon 5G, whereas at one point we didn't quite understand that 5G was even possible, nor was autonomous cars possible. We've reached such a level of, as we consider to be intelligence, but the question is, have we reached the level of intelligence to understand that we knew nothing? I'm one to believe that it's totally incomplete. And in other words, we're going the wrong way. We're going the wrong way as we try to harness the vacuum fluctuation, which they call the Planck constant 10 to the negative 33 centimeter, which is the smallest known existence within the universe, and they're stating it's very difficult for us to reach that level of power. I think the reason we haven't reached that level of power is because we haven't reached the developed mind to know what we're capable of reaching. It's unfortunate that we not only haven't reached that level of technology, the key is to reach that level of intellect. Once we reach a level of intelligence beyond the Planck constant, which is considered the unified field of everything, I believe that the theories such as general relativity, special relativity, Heisenberg uncertainty, Pauli exclusion, and all those things that those that came before us thought they knew didn't have a clue that they didn't know. The Bible says many have taken the wide gate that lead to destruction and the narrow gate that lead to life. Not many people find. I'm one to believe that we are unfortunately perishing because we're going the wrong way. We don't have the ability to understand that everything is not as it appears. Everything is pixels, ones and zeros, binary. Everything is information and data. The reason we don't perceive it as being data is because unfortunately we have created the technology to utilize the technology for the benefit of us, but at the same time we fail to realize we work just as what we created. Unfortunately, we haven't contracted inward, just like a supernova that contracts inward, the smallest point within. Subsequently, it get down to the smallest, and a black hole is created, and as a result, you're not able to warp space and time. In other words, everything that we thought was is going to be non-existent. And the reason it has not yet been non-existent because we hadn't reached the level of intelligence to know that we're capable of reaching a developed mind in order to understand that we never understood. We've established false religion, false doctrine, and as a result of establishing false doctrine, we had no other choice but to follow that trajectory because that's the only hope that we had. So as a result, we continue to follow the false doctrine, and we're following it today. The Bible says many are called, but few are chosen. Unfortunately, those that are preaching and teaching, many of you believe that they're truly men of God. And don't get me wrong, I was also in that same position, and I felt the same way. And the only reason you're in that position is because their level of light is a little greater than yours, but unfortunately, it's not the ultimate light that's going to separate and warp space and time at absolute. The question is, can we reach the speed of light? Energy equals mass at the speed of light. Einstein, back in the early 1900s, stated that it was impossible. I think Stephen Hawking also stated that it was impossible. And those physicists that are among us today state it's impossible. And the reason it's impossible to them is because we haven't reached the developed mind to know that it is possible. In other words, it's very difficult to be able to encode something and come up with the value of what you're trying to encode if you have not the power to encode it. So as a result, it collapses. Just like when you look at a picture or look at data or information, you can't go beyond the data or information that you're looking at because the data or information is collapsing at the external, so you can't see the internal, which is the molecular subatomic level, so you can't measure the position and or velocity of what you're trying to see. Once you begin to measure the position and the velocity of what you're trying to see, you would subsequently leave the reality in which you dwell. In other words, you've now became Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, first and the last. You actually came up with the field that many believe that is impossible to come up with, and that's the unified field of everything, which is the perfect sound. We got work to do, St. Louis, as well as Chi-Town, the Bahamas, New York, Oregon, Georgia, as well as Alabama. We got work to do, and unfortunately, we haven't yet reached a level of understanding that we believe that we're capable of achieving what we never thought was possible. But it states that with God, everything is possible, and subsequently, we have to become that developed sound in order to be able to manifest the power of God. The coronavirus and viruses in the past have been amongst us, and they have never left. The only way to eradicate those viruses is for us to become a perfect sound. And as a result of the perfect sound, the viruses that are literally causing millions to perish would not have the ability to grip that host soul. And the reason it will not be able to grip that host soul because the host will become a different sound. And as a result, the viruses will be fought at the molecular subatomic level and where they're waging the war. And as a result, the membrane will be destroyed, just like an opera singer singing and destroying a glass with just its sound. I just wanted to come on briefly just to give you some hope, to let you know there is hope. Many of you believe that your son or daughter or whomever that was out prostituting and committing various crimes, etc. It wasn't them. It was their undeveloped mind that's being controlled and by darkness. And as a result, darkness can only go one way, and that's the laws of thermodynamics. Entropy increases to further chaos. And the reason you think it's your daughter and or son that's committing the act is because you too are in darkness and can't measure the position and the velocity of what's going on. Because once you measure it, you'll be able to see that broken glass reconfigure itself back on the table in a different reality, and everything will change. As they say, a star is born. Until next time, I wanted to come on just for a moment just to say, I'm coming home, St. Louis. I have no choice. Much is given, much is required. That's where it all started. And that's where we must start it again. In other words, in this time, we're gonna build differently than we built before, because before I didn't know the truth, had not a clue. But now I believe that the mind has evolved enough to know that it's time to take that mountain. And we're gonna take it. And that's by any means necessary. Shout out to my grandbaby, Noah. Granddaddy's so proud of your son. I thank God for you. It's you that's causing Granddaddy to take it to another level, because I refuse to allow your generation and your grandkids, your kids, your grandkids to go through what we're going through right now. So it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to make that difference so it doesn't affect your grandchildren or your children. And we're going to make a difference. We're going to do what it takes to make that difference by any means necessary. Not only that, we're not going to sit around and allow politicians to control and rule as they're ruling, being that they're incomplete in mind. They have not a clue that they have not a clue. They're no different than the people they're actually representing. The blind are literally leading the blind. Shout out to Winton and Catherine. Continue to grind. Dad, love you. Shout out to Zion, Gabe, and Danielle. Continue to do what you're predestined to do. Also, shout out to my oldest, little Walter. Continue to grind, son. We got work to do. Much is given, much is required. May God bless you all. God bless.